Hey, everybody. This is John Dye with the Faith and Media Initiative, specifically on the emerging leaders emphasis side of things, where we take mentors like Mike Oren, who we have today, and I'll introduce here shortly, and he shares some of his thoughts and his career trajectory and advice with young, faith-filled leaders who want to go into media. Specifically, we'll be talking about journalism today. Mike, welcome.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me, John.
Good to have you. Well, I'll just do a short introduction so people know who you are, what you've done, and then we'll jump right into some questions. How does that sound? Right. So Mike is the CEO and publisher of LNP. That's only been a month or so, and we'll talk more about that since he joined LNP, which is Lancaster, Pennsylvania's 232-year-old local news operation. So talk about legacy. There's a legacy for you. He has spent his entire career working to bring local news into the digital age. He has built and sold multiple companies and served in leadership roles at DallasNews and T.D. Jake's Enterprises. So we'll get into that here shortly. Mike, good to have you on.
Great. Thrilled to be here. We're on my favorite topics, so it's always a joy.
Interesting. Well, before we begin, give us some idea. You just recently joined LNP. Give us a little bit of a history. I've done just enough research to be dangerous, but tell us more about LNP. This is a legacy news organization, and what an honor it is to be with them, I'm sure.
Absolutely, it is. And especially at this time, which is, I think, so pivotal, both just nationally for local newspapers and news orgs, but particularly here locally as well. There was a situation here where the same family had owned the newspaper for more than 100 years. And about 3 years ago, they had given the paper as a gift to public media, so like NPR, PBS affiliate in nearby Harrisburg. And there was a lot at the time of optimism and hope about that marriage. And it for many reasons that we don't need to get into here, it didn't go well. And they were under some serious financial strain. And so at the beginning of this year, the newspaper was given to a new nonprofit called Always Lancaster. And that group is who hired me as CEO to come in. And I wouldn't quite say a turnaround because the paper's very strong in many ways. We have more subscribers, print subscribers per capita than literally any newspaper I've been able to find in the country.
Wow.
So quite the gift, right? But coming out of a period of challenge and turmoil and, trying to figure out what the world looks like going forward. So it's a real exciting time. There's some life in this institution, and I'm starting to see already even just a little swagger from the team that maybe had been missing over the last couple of years as they were struggling with internal things. So, it is really an amazing opportunity to take this well-regarded key institution in this community and still have time to figure out, as print becomes less viable, what we can look like as a primarily digital organization. And candidly, that's an area we're behind in. And so that's where a lot of the opportunity lies. But it's just a tremendous community. It was really, I felt like a little God-led on this because my wife and I moved to Lancaster in 2024. We've been here for 2 years, and I had no intention of getting involved with the newspaper here. But we had kept asking ourselves, why did God put us in Lancaster? Because we came here not for a job, not for people. We just researched and found the community where we wanted to live. And I don't know, this seems like the answer.
Incredible. God led. Yeah. I love that. And we'll delve into that because, again, we do deal with the intersection of faith and media. So I've got some more questions. But before we go there, you hit on something important, I think, which is you talked about the importance of preserving print. And in LNP's situation, the necessity because of the number of subscribers. How do you know, not talking just LNP, but generally, when print is an asset and not a burden? Because we see so much of that starting to shrink, right, as the digital grows.
Right.
When is print an asset?
Print is an asset while it's still throwing off cash. And that may sound a little cold. We would love to keep doing 7 days of print forever. And we're going to keep doing 7 days of print much longer than I think many others are. But, I love the Mark Twain quote, all generalizations are dangerous, especially this one, meaning not to generalize, but to
Yes.
generalize. There are no diehard print readers at an advanced age who we're ever going to get to move to the digital product. At the same exact time, there is not a 30-year-old in this county that I'm going to get to go subscribe to the print product. And they have very different wants and needs. So I see the print product as an asset because it allows us to serve the older members of our community. And by the way, it's an interesting thing. We're at the heart of Amish country here. About 10% of our subscribers are either Amish or old school Mennonite. So the plain
Wow.
folk.
Yes.
And we would be the English. And so, there's that audience to serve. But ultimately, we know the bulk is going to go online. And so what we have to do is leverage what we're gaining from the print to fund us becoming a more online institution. And it's a delicate tightrope walk because we want to give the print people a great product. But they want different things. So for instance, in our print, national and international news has still got a pretty solid chunk of space. Less so for digital because that's not what people are coming to us for on digital. But the print reader still wants more of that full package. And so that's something that's very important. So yeah, I think it is, it's a matter of continuing to honor these longtime customers and serve them for as long as we possibly can. But there will be a day, fortunately, I don't think it's soon, where print starts becoming a drain and we have to look at how we reconstitute that.
Yeah, very smart. Yeah. So you're kind of shifting between two worlds, right? You still have a population that does print, younger population that does digital. So you service both of those in the native way that they want to consume their news. And you're smart to do that.
Well, we have work to do there, though, because I would say,
Yeah.
look, I said we had the highest per capita print subscription I've been able to find, but we're one of the lower ones on the digital side. So
Yes.
we've got some catch up work to do.
Play some catch up. Yes. Well, let's talk about this because LNP is just the latest in the things that you've done in your career. Your path is including founding new products, Pegasus, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you've also advised mission-driven organizations, other types of things. What do you enjoy most about moving between being an operator and a strategist? And maybe in multiple roles, you had to serve as both, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the season I'm in right now. I think is where I'm trying to lean much more into the strategy and less as an operator. I think, over my career, kind of my superpower has been that I was a strategist who could operate. But I actually asked our board to hold me accountable for not dipping too deep into the operations here, because you can just get caught in the weeds. And I think part of what this organization is facing, and many others are, is they've just been scrambling so hard to feed the beast and keep, make sure there was a paper every day and stay solvent, that they haven't had an opportunity to be strategic. And so that's what I'm trying to bring in is my focus being completely on that area. And then the good folks on our team, many of whom have been here for 35 and 40 years, let them continue to operate. And as a strategist, what I'm primarily focused on right now is getting problems out of their way and inefficiencies out of their way, so that we can grow. And so that's a big piece of the job.
All right. Well, very good. I'm going to ask you a question about what you think might be the hardest part Again, I know you're new to LNP, but you can talk about
Right.
this maybe more globally. What's the hardest part of building a sustainable local news model today? Because you are involved in local news, and that's one of your areas of focus and emphasis. Would you say it's
Right.
audience growth, revenue diversification, which we talked about, print versus online, cost control, internal change management, right? What maybe some of the people working there have expected and the culture that's created? All of those are important. Which one do you think, though, is maybe the hardest part of building that news org today?
I think the hardest part is convincing local people that this is worth paying for and that they need to subscribe to it. And that's globally. We've gotten so used to free news, and particularly on the international and national level, it's so commoditized. There's so much out there that you can always find a free source, but it costs a lot of money to produce local news. It is the classic version of the last mile problem. And so there's a lot of free writers, right, who, maybe read online and don't pay. And so, I just, the idea that this is important enough to my life and my community that I'm going to pull out my wallet and pay for it. I mean, the average person will only have like 7 total subscriptions, and that includes Netflix and Spotify and Amazon. Like, so think about all of those, maybe Peloton, and then where does local fit into that? And that's become, doubly hard over the last decade. As I used to go when I would do talks on local news. My second slide was always a beaming local is nonpartisan. And we've lost that over the last decade. It's become very partisan. And so, I think one of our challenges here is, we report factually. We're nonpartisan, but we have a lot of readers who think that we lean left. And whether we do or not, they think that. And so how do we bring them back into the fold and back into the conversation? I've already been working on that, looking for common ground on things that are important to them that maybe we don't cover as well. So like, I'm not saying we're going to go out and do this immediately, but just in the last weeks, I've learned that there's a tremendous amount of interest and alignment, both from the left and the right locally, on the issue of farmland preservation, and been told that maybe we could do more on farmland preservation. So now, as a nonprofit, I'm out talking to funders who care about farmland preservation about, can we fund a beet? But the reason I'm doing that is that's common ground. That's something that I can excite the people out in the county. To give you an idea of the construction here, Lancaster City is as blue as you'll ever find. And then 1 inch outside of town, it's very, very pro-Trump, right wing. And we're serving all those people. We have, the way I put it is, we have 562,000 customers. That's how many people live here. And that we're serving. And so we've got to bring them to the point that they feel they're being represented in our pages. And we're going to work very hard on that the next year, while maintaining the same editorial standards we've had for 2 centuries.
Yes. Love that. Love that. Love that. Well, Mike, let's delve a little bit more into your personal faith journey and maybe where that intersects with some of the things you're doing. How has your personal understanding of faith, like you've already mentioned, you felt God led to be where you're at, but how has that faith component shaped the way you think about media, maybe as a public trust, and maybe about feeling called to be in this space? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to, if you'll indulge me a second, I'm going to kind of go out a little wider than that in my faith journey, because I can draw a really clear line. So I grew up very diehard Catholic, and then was really away from the church for a long time. And during that first startup, Pegasus News, you mentioned, was during that time. So I went through founding, funding, growing, building, selling, carrying on, really without including God in the boardroom, right? And then as I came back to my faith and actually got extremely involved in my church and in faith and business in my community at the time, which was Dallas, I built other businesses and it was an entirely different experience. And that's why I wanted to kind of do the zoom out there. I find when you're running a business, a cause, a startup, leading any kind of group, when I wasn't coming as much from a place of faith there, I was impatient. I was entitled. I thought we deserved certain things. Probably wasn't as grateful at some of the extended amazing things people were doing. And worst of all, I thought I was in total control.
Mm.
So every decision fell on me. Everything. And it was almost like a hubris of like, I can build this. I'm going to do this. And, when that changed, as I went on to my next enterprise, which was a ad agency that I built and ran with the Dallas Morning News, I found myself coming more from a place of, hey, God, what are the possibilities in front of us here? Definitely not like an operation where we talked about faith every day, but I found employees coming to me asking me, hey, I see a difference in you. What's going on? Right. And so it's that kind of witness that like you can't plan. I mean, other than just being intentional every day. And I was just much more, frankly, mentally healthy around it because I can't control everything. John, you can't
Yes.
control everything. And just that acknowledgement that he's in control, I'm not, changes the whole perspective of how you run the business. And
Absolutely.
so I found myself more successful, better relationships with employees, better long-term friendships, and places where occasionally faith would pop in without it happening. We had a terrible situation at our ad agency where one of our employees was assaulted in her home. And come into the office and I find everybody standing in a circle praying. Like, I didn't ask them to do that. Some of those
Yes.
folks in that circle I know weren't Christians or believers at that point, but that was their natural response, right? It wasn't a, hey, everybody, we got to do this now. So just
Right.
seeing that brings you a whole different vibe. And look, I really believe, and with LNP now being a nonprofit and being in more of a service position to our community, look, we're not going to be measured by how many papers we sell or how many digital licenses we sell. We're going to be measured by delivering lower crime and better schools and better government and better opportunity for people who maybe don't have as many economic opportunities. Like, our work is to help co-create, right? And make this a better community. And we
Yes.
can't do that ourselves. I mean, that's absurd. 100 people, we're going to go turn around a 500,000, but that's really what our job is. And whether people are of faith or not, we can all agree that we want more businesses to succeed. More people to find churches, more people to find community. I mean, we're in such a
Mm.
time that community is missing in people's lives. So, as I lay out our what we've got to do for people digitally, I talk about, hey, we're doing news really well. We are not going to journalism our way out of this problem, but we can do a lot more on utility and how we help people lead their daily lives and live better to their definition of better. And then ultimately we've succeeded when people who met digitally get together in person for some purpose. And that's really ultimately what we want to do, um, in a way that uplifts the community.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Good thoughts. Good thoughts. I'm going to follow up and double click on one thing that you said. This might be a little bit ancillary to that, but it's very relatable and very related. Where do you see, Mike, opportunities for faith communities to strengthen civic life? As you look at LNP and other places, how can they strengthen that, but without turning journalism maybe into advocacy? Or
Right.
how can they strengthen that in a very prolific manner, right? Something maybe that only they can do in certain ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing is becoming a distribution channel for information, maybe to people who aren't getting it from us. right? I mean, and we've seen that where churches have gotten involved in getting information out on public health issues or public safety issues in their community. I see us as a secular organization partnering very deeply with the faith community. I mean, as we're building in utility, and helping people find where to go to a concert or whatnot, why are we not also helping them find the nearest church service of the denomination they're interested in and information about that church? One of the things we're thinking about doing is pretty much every church now podcasts the weekly sermon. So,
Yeah.
we're thinking about doing a channel that aggregates the weekly sermon from our local weekly sermons from our local churches and maybe pulls out some themes that people who are interested can reflect on. I think there are important issues that our pastors can speak on in our editorial pages. And sometimes they just don't think of that like, oh, they're not going to want to hear from me. I'm a yeah, we want to hear from faith leaders. And we want more of that in our opinion pages. So I think, participating with us, and then I think maybe the spicier, harder take too is also being partners in not distributing disinformation. And I'm not saying that that's something that is broadly happening in churches, but I look at every town in our community, there's a Facebook group, and some of them have journalistic thought behind what they're doing, and others just want to spread stories. Well, I mean, Jesus doesn't want us gossiping and telling false things to each other. And I think it is part of the role of the faith community when there's an important issue that impacts the community to say like, hey, I know we're all being told this from the sides. This isn't vetted information. Maybe go to maybe go to the paper, or if you don't believe that we're doing it right, go to somebody else. But I do see them as a big partner in this work. I mean, you think about it,
Very good.
if you're in a local community, big, small, rural, urban, there's a church near you where you can meet. And there's a lot of that around here. I mean, I went to a listening session for, our readers that we hosted at a parochial school. So, they're part of the community. I think we have to, and I'm saying that as the industry, need to make some strides to include them in that. And I hope they'll come alongside.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Great thoughts. Great thoughts. Okay, Mike, we're going to enter something that I call Mentorship Mike Micro Musings. So this is a just quick call and response, 15 to 30 seconds.
Speed round. Okay.
Speed round for you. Round for you. Okay. Founder mode or turnaround mode?
Turnaround mode.
Okay. Okay. Big strategy meeting or small problem solving session?
Small problem solving session.
Okay. Build it yourself or partner to scale?
Partner to scale, except for the one thing you do better than anybody else in the world.
Smart. Here's another tough one. Subscriber growth or ad growth?
Subscriber growth in order to move to ad growth. So
yes,
we are actually going to be pulling a page from the Salt Lake Tribune's playbook. And I don't know if you're familiar with what they did, but I know we're in speed round. I'm going to give a really quick thing. So they grew their digital subscriptions and then took down the paywall. And they did that by turning those faithful subscribers into donors. That's the journey we're going to be on as well. But we're at the beginning of it. So we have to get enough digital to convert to donors. So at that point, we'll be more donor and advertising. But today, if I can only have $1, I want it from a subscriber.
Yes. Good call. So this next question, I want you to think about how others would describe you to answer this question. One word that describes Mike Oren's leadership style.
Inclusive.
Love that. Okay, now give me one word that you think describes a healthy newsroom.
Curious.
Okay, good. Think back upon your full career really quick, and what is a project or multiple projects, if you want to name multiple, that changed how you think about local news?
Wow. I'm going to have to go there with my Pegasus News startup in the the 2000s, we were breaking a lot of conventional wisdom at the time. And I think what I learned, the big thing I learned from that experience that I'm bringing in, was just talking to our team about this morning, is people are not just one thing, right? I care about local news. I love Americana music. I smoke meats. Like, I have a lot of different things about me. And what local news, I think, has really dropped the ball on, that we sort of started figuring out back then, is how to reach the whole person. And so, for instance, when we did Pegasus News, we actually had an early beta that was just music, local music, because we knew that genre really well, and we had a great audience. So, well, then we moved to full on news, started covering the full community, and people said, "You're fools. You've got this audience of tattooed 20 somethings, and now you're trying to talk to them about school board meetings." Well, what
Yes.
happened was, they weren't looking for school board info. But when we put the school board info next to the things they were looking for, they engaged, because that was their community and it was relevant to them. So, kind of anecdotally, we would gauge our impact based on how many tattooed people were showing up at public meetings. And it was significant. Right. It was real. So I just think that we're here to serve the whole person. And
Yes.
that means really flipping from a top down, here's what you should know and here's what you should think, to a, here's what we think you're interested in, let us share what we have. And that is
Yeah.
a very different way of approaching the business that I really actually think now is the only road left to survival in this industry.
Yeah. 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 It's digging into those niches, right?
Yeah.
Where they care. That's where eyeballs will follow. And it may not be the mass numbers, but it's the individuals who really care about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Tell me this. I would love to know your opinion on one thing that you'd love every local newsroom to try, to test out.
So this is my pet thing, and in fact, we're talking about it here. And I've done it twice. I did it at Pegasus. I did it at Dallas News, and it wasn't quite scalable yet. And that is building a massive knowledge graph in your digital product behind the news, where you take what you have vetted and know about people, places, organizations, and events in the area, and just keep growing that data. So then it's useful. And, and the reason it was hard before was, the last time I did it, I had a developer team that spent 9 months building. We had a database team that spent 6 months collecting data. And now, in the world of AI, I mean, when I was interviewing for this job, I vibe coded a proof of concept of that in a morning. What took our
Wow.
team, several years of man hours to produce,
Yes.
I can now do better and more quickly. And it helps too, because, there's a lot of concern in the news side of our business about AI. And are we going to have AI writing the articles and AI making the decisions? And that's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is using AI to aggregate all this data we already have and then use it to feed utility on the site and to feed stories to our newsroom, right? Like, they should be able to say, like, what is the biggest institution that we haven't done a feature on in the last 2 years, and get a quick answer. Right. So I believe
Yes.
that should be one of the backbones of every local news strategy. That I'm starting to see some other folks come along on that. But I'll admit, I was sort of alone on that island until AI hit. And now people are going, oh, wow, we can actually take what we have and create value without having to do a lot more work on it. So that would be my hot button for other publishers to think about.
That's great. That's great. Khaleesi asks this: looking ahead 10 years, Mike, what will successful local news orgs do better than they do now? And maybe the knowledge graph that you mentioned, that's probably one thing that you would hope that they would ingest and actually take on. So let's assume that that's a given, or
Right.
they understand that. What other things do you think they'll do better than they do now?
Well, okay, so one is just it becomes a matter of business focus. So all the good things I said about print are true, but I didn't say the bad thing about print, which is that it takes an outsized amount of attention from our team to produce that daily miracle. And as we move to a world in 10 years where I think you're going to see most papers have like a weekend deep read edition and then it's otherwise digital. And what that does is it will allow them to be much more proactive and cover much more digitally because they're not putting the effort into the print as much. So that's one big thing. I think the other biggest thing is just that as we shed this voice from on high, finger wag, we know better than you news ethos. I think we're going to become better at creating community and getting local people together to find common ground. Right. And so I don't see, it's not our job to advocate for a cause, but if we see two groups in our community that are at odds and we can bring them to the table and share factual information and kind of moderate and share that with the community, then I think we're really making big, positive, measurable changes. And you will see, when I say local news, we're not monolithic, right? There's 230-year-old newspapers like us, and then there's upstarts, just digital only, like I've done before in their communities. And they've started with community by and large, and then they're getting to news. And I think we're going to get to a world where those two things are hopefully very interlocked.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. Stephen asked this: how do you keep a newsroom from becoming too cautious and or too reactive?
Yeah. I've first off never found a newsroom that erred to being too cautious. I mean, they all grew up, wanting to get the big scoop. Now maybe there's some caution in formats. So look, I mean, I think we're by nature reactive, right? Every day we start with a blank slate. What's going to happen? But we also do our best work when we plan and think ahead and can bring context, right? And so, yeah, I've seen newsrooms. I'll be honest, it's something we struggle with now is in reacting to today's news, are we able to get ahead of tomorrow's? And that's a journey, I think. It's something we're going to have to always be mindful about. I think a big part of it is measuring what we do and seeing like what percentage did we do that was reactive versus proactive, and how do we grow that? Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, good. Okay, Sydney asked a question, and I think I understand where she's going with this. How do you know whether a newsroom is underinvesting in innovation, or, and I'm going to change this slightly, or simply trying too many things at once? How do you focus, I think, on, where do you try to do multiple things to see where you catch fire and drop the things that don't? Or is innovation kind of an undercurrent, a theme that if it's underinvested in might impact the whole puzzle?
Well, no one has ever accused the local news industry of overinvesting in innovation. I don't think that that's been a place where, but it's something to be mindful of. And I've seen it in startups. It's something I'm mindful of as we're figuring out what to do next at LNP. And I would say, know what your long-term goal is, know what your annual goal is. And then if that innovation doesn't support one of those goals, then maybe focus on one that does, right? So for instance, I'm looking at a lot of innovation in technology now because I found that we have kind of some technological debt from the last few years. Well, if one of my major goals is to get every reporter producing one additional story a day, the best way I can get to that is to make their tools better and make it work and make it so their computer doesn't crash while they're filing a story. It's really about knowing a very limited number of things you can achieve in a time period and making sure that every innovation attempt is at least an attempt to serve one of those. And then I would say is, the art of knowing when to kill that innovation if it's not working without doing it too quickly. Right? You got to give it a chance to work, but you also, hey, just because we sunk the cost doesn't mean that it's not working. We keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't throw good money after
Yeah.
bad, right? Or good time after bad. Yeah. So good. And Mike, I think I'm going to end on one of my questions because you've hit all around this and you may have actually hit on this, but I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. Then I want to give you 4, 5, 6 minutes or however much time you need to directly address our audience, which are young,
Right.
20 somethings that are moving into journalism, and maybe address what you think they need to know about the industry as you see it today, 2026, at the time we're recording this. What do they need to know? Their eyes need to be wide open about what journalism looks like. What should they be excited about? What should they be cautious about? And most of these individuals listening will be from a faith tradition. So if there's anything you would recommend, how do you stay strong in your faith tradition while pursuing a course in journalism? We'd love to hear. Okay, a newsroom's mission, critical, right? Especially with a nonprofit like LNP that you're at now. How do you protect that mission while also making the operational changes that you need to survive, right? You need to get this in the black or somewhere viable. Mission on one hand, actually making the changes on the other hand, whether it be to culture, whether it be to manpower and woman power, all of those considerations. Talk a little bit about
Yeah.
that.
One of my old bosses used to always say, profit without purpose is meaningless, but without profit, there is no opportunity for purpose. Right. So isn't that and I'll also say, yeah, we're a nonprofit now, but nonprofit is a tax status.
Mike, you're back.
Apologize, John. I lost power.
Oh, no worries. No worries. Where we left off was, the profit and purpose.
yeah.
Without profit, there's no chance to pursue the purpose. And you said, after all, nonprofit is a tax status.
Not a business model, right? You still have to pay all your bills, right? You still have to have a penny more than you spent or you're not able to sustain, right? So, I think that's one of the big issues is like, and the thing that I've discovered in my work over the years is that they're not in opposition, right? If we do the things that are of purpose, the profits will come. One of the greatest things I learned at Dallas News was right before we did our digital transformation. We did a deep dive across all platforms and all types of readers and into what would actually make people pay for a subscription. And it's all the stuff we went to journalism school for. It's watchdog reporting. It's government reporting. It's the how do I make my community better reporting. So the mission and what I say the best dollar is a subscriber dollar. They are absolutely aligned. And I think that's important. Until we find that alignment, I don't know that you have a business that is going to make the long haul. And so, I think it's us really doubling down on that.
Yeah. Good thoughts. Well, Mike, I want to give you just time to talk to our, specifically our audience, the young student,
Yeah.
20 something that is entering their career in journalism. Talk to them about what they should be excited about, maybe some things to be cautious about or consider. Also, I'd love your thoughts on how do you remain faithful in your faith tradition and pursue a career in journalism? Just anything along those lines would be helpful.
Yeah, and I'm going to start with the how in your faith tradition can you succeed in journalism? Partly because I hate that we even discuss that question, like that it's even an issue. I'm not saying we should sweep it under the rug, but like why everything in the Bible tells us find the truth, seek the truth. And I just think that we've gotten into a world where even young journalists think, oh, I'm from a faith tradition. Do I fit into this, kind of perception of the journalism world? And you absolutely do. And I've seen so many great examples of it. I had a colleague once who was doing an investigative story on a large group of people who had all been very badly hurt physically by the actions of some company. And he was calling every one of them to get exactly right what they had suffered. Well, imagine making 100 of those phone calls a day. Your empathy meter is going to go on override. The way he got through that, while he dialed and the phone rang, he prayed for the person he was about to speak to. That's how you can live successfully in the journalism world, and maybe with some tools in the toolbox that somebody who hasn't found their faith journey doesn't have, right? I also believe that, look, we are in a world right now that is more partisan than anything I've seen in my lifetime, and I'm 54. And it is hard. There are people who will say, if you don't cover this agenda, you're not a good Democrat. Or if you don't cover this agenda this way, you're not a good Christian. Or, whatever. And the great defense is the truth. Report the truth. Speak fairly. Speak in love. One of the things that we're going through a process now at LNP of doing mission, vision, and values. And I don't want to say too much because I haven't even unveiled the results from the team to the team yet. But one of the top ones is we love our county. We love our community. And we are acting out of love. And that doesn't have to come from a place of faith. Now, for me, it does. And that doesn't mean that I am primarily, out here to proselytize, or really at all. What I'm doing is saying, hey, I love everyone in this community. Because you are here in this community, I love you. And I've been out, talking recently, not just to our lovers, but our haters. Right. And I'm like, I want you to have the community you want. I want you to, have a better life. And I'm going to enable that as much as I can while always telling the truth, whether we like the truth or not. And I think that is a position that we all have to take in this day and age. Speaking specifically for folks who are young journalists, my biggest advice is stay curious. Your ability to problem solve and figure out answers is more important than learning a beat per se, right? Become a great journalist and find your niche. But don't think you're limited to politics or entertainment or real estate or whatever it is you've been brought up in. Because frankly, most places don't have the resources now to have 100 topical folks. And what is so valuable is a journalist that we know we can drop into any situation and they're going to come back with the story. So I would definitely say that. And I would just say, look, this is a hard job and a very hard industry right now. And I couldn't do this without my faith. I mean, I've been pushing the rock up the hill for a really long time on local news. And I had, at the time, knew I needed a break about 8 years ago. Somebody asked me at a party what I did, and I said I was a hospice nurse, because that's the cynical view of this industry now. Well, I took some time away. I, talked to God a lot about where this should go, because it's maybe not where I wanted it to over the last 20 years. And I feel like I'm just in a lot better headspace for it, because I'm not in hubris and antithesis to what the gospel tells us. I'm not assuming it's all on me, because if it is, we're all in trouble.
Yeah. Well, your wife might say that too, right? I don't know. Mine would. No, that's great. Mike, incredible words of wisdom. Best hour of my day so far. Thank you for joining us.
Mine too.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, happy to do it.
We'll be back again with another episode of Mentorship Mike, another great mind, very similar to Mike's, in the near future. So look for that. Mike, have a good day. So good for you to join us.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Again, I'm sorry about the technical problem.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, John.